this is us catching up.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because we haven't when was the last time we would have sat down and been like, hey, how are you?
God, ages. Because we used to get to have natters for the social media, and now I get to hang out with the lovely Lois. But
Who's way better than me anyway. Yeah, we don't really get to talk that much, do we?
Yeah.
So this is like it'll be a nice opportunity to catch up. But
Yeah,
I am
totally.
also going to ask you some questions.
Some actual questions.
Anna Considine, this is your life. Hi everyone, welcome back to Creative Juices. Today we've got another amazing guest with us. I'm doing an intro today, which is not the norm in comparison to the first couple of episodes that you've seen, but this is some feedback that we've had from people who've been listening. So we're taking it on board, we're implementing it into the episodes because we do want this to be as good as it possibly can be. So today's guest is a good friend of mine, somebody that I met through the co-working community here in Northampton, right back sort of pre-pandemic, beginning of the pandemic sort of time. Her name is the Anna Considine to me, not just Anna Considine, but the Anna Considine. And for those who don't know Anna, you're going to get to know her a little bit over the next hour or so. But Anna is a brand photographer. She's also a content writer. She's a language nerd, which we're going to get into. She's a yogi. She's a very peaceful, calm individual with lots of good energy about her, which you're going to discover, like I say, over the next hour or so. One thing we're going to look at today in particular is Anna's business is focused very heavily on being gentle, being slow, and being profitable, and the fact that you can do all of those three things together. It doesn't always have to be at breakneck speed. So without further ado, hello, Anna.
Hello. Thank
Welcome
you for
to the
having me.
podcast. This is going to sound a bit weird, but when I was imagining this podcast, you were one of the people I had in my head in terms of would love to have that conversation. Like genuinely, I'm not just saying that. There's a handful of people that I was like, they have to be on it. They have to be on it. Like you sort of you did have a choice, but I was like, no, they have to be on it because you're one of those people that I've got to know over the last few years. Actually, most of the time at a bit of a distance. Most of our connections been over Zoom and then a little bit in person, and then now you live very far away, which we'll get into shortly. But I'm really glad you're here. I'm really glad we're going to have this conversation, and I'm excited to just get your insight into this subject, the lovely subject of creativity. So what we're going to do is initially, I just want to start with your earliest memories of being creative, because I think one of the things that started this podcast was, well, am I creative? Like, is what I do creative? Because I used to look at mum and just think, well, yeah, you're the creative one. I'm the one that does all of the planning. But actually, when I looked back, there's a lot in my youth and my childhood where I clearly am a creative person, and I've taken those things forward in my life. So yeah, what are the earliest memories of being creative for you?
So I just think that from a really young age, I was kind of in love with the idea of being alive and like really excited about the idea that I had all these things about me that were different from anybody else. And each person had their own things that made them unique and that made them different. And I just remember being about maybe 7 or 8 and being like, I've got to write a diary. Like, I've just got to chronicle like all of this amazing stuff that's happening to me. Oh my God. And I really feel like that's like a common thread that's kind of stayed with me, that I just have this deep-seated kind of appreciation for life, and therefore I want to kind of document and engage with it. And so it started as like writing little like autobiographies, which seems absolutely nuts, like absolutely like crazy person territory.
These need to be published immediately.
Oh my God. I had like a little typewriter and I do like little self-portraits and things, but it was just all coming from that place of like, wow, like even without understanding the full biology of like how rare it is for each one of us to have got to the position of being alive at all. I still felt this real like, wow, isn't this special? Isn't this like a beautiful thing that I'm getting to do?
That's
which
mad.
was, again, I was quite a young person at the time. So it's kind of crazy to think about, but that just instilled in me like this thirst to kind of document and engaged with all different kinds of mediums. So there was a lot of writing that happened, and then a lot of drawing. I wasn't actually into cameras or photography at all while I was growing up, which is a bit bonkers because that's what I do and I love now. But I loved kind of drawing, painting, lots of art-based kind of activities, crafting, cross-stitching, everything. I was gonna give it a go.
Yeah.
And it just was a long-standing love of life and a long-standing fascination of life, and a feeling that it was really important that I got to be here, and that's re-emerged in like later chapters of my life in slightly different guises. But that's how it began.
I can totally, now that I've only known you as an adult, and that makes total sense, like as to why you are the way you are, that you started like that. Where do you think that came from though? Was that something that was very much like in the values of your family, or like the spirit of your family, or would you say you were slightly the odd one out there? Like, where do you think that sort of like love of life and fascination with how brilliant it is came from?
I imagine some of it might have started with the fact that I was the only girl with 3 brothers. So I think that gave me an idea of like, oh, there's a uniqueness here, how exciting, blah, blah, blah. So maybe some of it was that. I also think I was raised in a religious household, and I was really like, the bits that I remember enjoying about going into church were all to do with like appreciating life itself,
the gratitude,
and like what a beautiful experience being alive and sharing it with people is, kind of thing. So while I'm not religious at all now, I found other bits that I didn't gel with so much, but from a young age I think I was a spiritual person, if not a religious one, and I still have a very kind of spiritual mind in a lot of ways now. So that creativity is kind of linked to that. We're only here once. Let's like revel in it and have as gorgeous a time as possible. And we might come into like my psychosis and my mental health journey a bit later, but that definitely ended up kind of cropping up again through that experience, which was interesting.
It's mad because I would say that's the most unique answer I've had to that question so far, but in a really... You've just answered it from a completely different place to everybody else, which is lovely. And that's the beauty of these kind of conversations. We're all different, and we've all got creativity in us that comes from different places, it's born out of different parts of our personality. It's like, for me, I liked taking the mickey out of people, so I used to write poems, and it was all very light-hearted, but that was my way of showing them like, I love you, I think you're great, here's a little funny poem about you and all the things that I notice about you. So it all comes from a different place, which I love. But that's sort of like, we're alive, let's embrace it, let's do as much as we can with it, is it's very unique and very lovely. So
thank you.
You're winning the answer to that question so far, possibly. Sorry everybody else. So that's sort of where it started for you then, and we'll definitely be segueing back, but let's just talk about, I'd like you to give everyone, obviously I know what you do now and I know a little bit about your journey, but you actually started as a languages student. So just talk us through sort of where that decision came into play, because obviously we've gone from, as a child, loved writing, loved creating. What happened to get you to want to study languages, and then what happened afterwards? Because you've gone from being a languages student to still practicing a bit of that, but now you're a brand photographer. So to lots of people, it's like, oh, languages, brand photography. What happened in the middle, basically?
Yeah. It's an interesting one, because I don't know that I always think on it and that I always have a clear idea of what the common threads were. But I think languages, it was something that I'd always really enjoyed while at school, and I was really fascinated with how our own versions of reality can vary so drastically from one place to another, and then also there are subtleties between one language to another, and I just found that really interesting, that my version of life that felt so absolute and so universal, I loved finding out that it was anything but. And we've all got these little kind of subtle variations in our upbringings and in how we express ourselves based on where we grew up and what language was our first language. So I think that was how it kind of started. It was also, I think, just a very difficult decision for me to decide what I wanted to do at university, because I had so many things that were really fun and were really lovely to do at school. And I just sort of felt like I was being pushed a little bit too much at too young an age to have a very clear idea of what I wanted my life to look like, when even as a teenager, I knew that I wanted to see the world first and kind of be out there and then narrow down and then decide, okay, I know what my career's going to look like, or at least some of my career. And it was a real frustration for me that we're so obsessed with making young people choose at such a young age.
Pick a career now and make a big decision now. It's scary.
Yeah. And so, with languages, it was kind of like, okay, this is just the thing that I enjoy the most. I think it'll open some doors for the future if I want to maybe live abroad, which I really thought might be a possibility. But that was kind of how I got to choosing it at uni. And then on my year abroad, I actually was really into doing makeup. I used to do the makeup for our nights out and stuff at uni.
Did not know this.
I know, like it was
Careful.
like a little window of time that even now I still really enjoy. I don't wear makeup a lot, but I enjoy like hearing people talk about it. I find it a really like soothing thing to kind of listen to in the background. And,
I mean, you wouldn't want to hear me talk about makeup. There'd be nothing soothing about. I'll do a video for you and just send it to you
on the blog. Yes. So it meant that when I was on my year abroad and I had extra income from spending all of like €100 on rent in the school that I lived in, I had money to then buy a camera. And I thought, I'm going to make makeup videos, because YouTube was really taking off at the time. And beauty YouTube was just starting to become a huge thing. So I did that for a little bit and then was like, I don't think this is for me. But at the same time, it meant I had this, for me, decent DSLR in my hands, and I was kind of experimenting less with the video and more with the photography side of things. And got back from my year abroad and my old boss was like, lovely to see you, Anna. By the way, we're looking for someone who can do our product photography. Do you know anyone? And now I look back, I don't think that it was what I took it as. I took it as like, we know you've got a camera and we're giving you this offer. Now I think probably he was just genuinely asking if I knew anyone. But I was like, well, I have a DSLR. But that was enough, like, in his eyes. But it meant I started and I was absolutely shocking. I was shooting clothing product photography for their boutique website.
Is this Bertie's?
This is Bertie's, yeah. So a lovely women's fashion shop that's since kind of changed names and changed hands, but was really long-standing. And it was an amazing business, but they must have been so patient with me because I was absolutely atrocious. Like, to begin with, it just took me so long to really train my eye and get an understanding of what helped with symmetry, how to do it quickly, and everything that I need to look out for, how to become a meister of the steamer, because everything had to look like smooth and perfect and flawless, and you're working with an asymmetrical mannequin to try and make something look like completely perfect. But I was really determined. It was like a place that I'd worked at as a teenager, and I was like, I can't let them down. Like, I really want to master this. And so we all kind of pitched into each other's jobs to an extent, but by the end of the summer, that everybody knew that if you wanted it shot like quickly and the best, you needed to come and ask me. And I was so proud that this was something that I really had struggled with, but had kind of mastered. And I think that was where I was like, I've got the bug. Like, I'm really enjoying this. And I worked there after uni for a couple of years and been working on my Instagram, and I just had my first 3 clients come up to me and say, hi, what you're doing for yours, can you do that for us? So I started out kind of a social media jack of all trades, doing the writing, doing the photography, and posting it all for them. So yeah, that was how I got there.
That was the birth of Studio Gently.
Yeah.
Which is what Anna's business is called, by the way. Just
Yeah.
I haven't done that bit yet. That was a faux pas in my intro, but it was my first one, so cut me some slack, people.
Yeah.
So you started there by doing that with Bertie's and then a couple of other clients, and like you say, basically managing their social media for them and producing the content. And this was in the real height of like the lovely phase of Instagram, where it was like beautiful photography, and it was so much simpler than it is now. Still difficult at the time to create, you know, a beautiful grid, like, and it was about a beautiful grid back then. We won't get into Instagram because that's a whole other conversation that we could probably have very separately and very passionately, Anna, I think.
Yeah, we could.
But now you're at a point where your business is a blend of, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of the work that you're doing is the brand photography, but you do also still write content for people, us included. So guys, just as a heads up, shout out to Anna. Anna actually writes the Brady creative content that you see on our business page. And for a time you actually wrote my personal brand content because
that was fun.
you write in a very similar, your natural style is very similar to my natural style. There's probably a few more P's and Q's in mine, but you write really similar to me. So Anna is actually the writer behind the Brady creative content. She works very closely with Lois, but just worth getting that in there so that people know who you are to us as well. But what was the journey from that then? So you started with Bertie's and then a few social media clients. Then what happened to get you to where you are now? And obviously, I don't know the timings in terms of how many years you've been doing this now, but there was a period of difficulty for you, probably not that long after the period you've just described, wasn't there, where unfortunately you went through a period of psychosis.
Yes.
So just talk us through that and how that's then got you to the kind of business you've got today.
Yeah, so I started the business in September 2016 and I just absolutely loved it. And I think that's something that's kind of important to highlight with it then turning into a mental health crisis, that it's not always we have these crises because we're stressed and we're having a horrible time. If anything, the opposite was true, and I was having what felt like the time of my life. But all of this hustle culture messaging was really prevalent at the time. There was like the 5 a.m. mindset, like rise and grind kind of stuff that was really, really popular. And because I didn't know anybody in my life that ran a business when I started my own, I thought that was the only way to do it. And I really engaged with and kind of took up all of this, like, you know, work super hard, blah, 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 sort of. Now I would call it nonsense, but I think that's probably a bit unfair. But all of this messaging, because I just didn't know there was any other way. And I was having the time of my life, but I wasn't sleeping super well, and I was ignoring the fact that I wasn't sleeping very well. I didn't have any sort of work boundaries. I worked on weekends. I did really long days for no particular reason. It would have been absolutely fine to cut back, but it again just felt like that was
it's the love of it, right?
Yeah, it was the love. And like, you know, that was my first baby. I haven't had any other babies, but that was my first baby. And I was completely in love with the work. So it just meant that at 24, I just completely burned my candle at both ends, ran out of juice and energy and stuff, and got to the stage where we didn't know that I was unwell, but I was very, very unwell. And I was starting to have, for me, lots of kind of paranoia, delusional thinking, starting to believe things that weren't true, but it all felt like it was all very normal and real kind of at the time. And eventually I think I had about 6 weeks where it was kind of acute and untreated and spiraling, and I was sleeping less and less and less. But my parents took me to A&E because my aunt had said, look, if you're worried about her mental health, then A&E can see you for mental health reasons, which is a really useful thing to know. I had no clue. So they took me in, and I was having the wackiest old time of it. I thought everybody was actors, and I thought that one of the mental health nurses was a priest, and he was giving me my last rites. Like, I was convinced that it was all going on. But it was actually just a very normal and very competent, actually, treatment of my mental health. And they signed me up with first the crisis team and then the early intervention psychosis team in Northampton, who are amazing. We have actually got an award-winning, probably the best in the country, if not one of the best in the world for psychosis. They're amazing. And so entered into treatment and all of a sudden was like, oh shit, like I've really got to confront myself. I've got to confront that lack of boundaries that I've had. And I remember my CPM being like, you know, work was such a big contributor for you that we've really got to work out like how to prevent this happening again, because if you've had one episode, it leaves you very vulnerable to having another one. So the first thing that I remember was like work phone, waited until like mine had run out of contract, just bought another one, or started another contract, sorry. And that was a massive help. But yeah, it was just a gradual kind of process of working out, okay, I can't do those hours again. What are my hours going to look like? What do I need to say to clients? Like how do I set kind of boundaries with them so that they know I'm not going to be available evenings and weekends and all that kind of thing. But the most revealing thing was how little people actually cared in the best way possible. That I really thought, oh my God, this is huge stuff but I kind of forgot that I wasn't like, you know, a doctor or like a surgeon or something where, you know, my work was like life or death or something. Like I'm a very happy creative freelancer and everybody was fine.
There's no need to kill yourself in the process, but it's like you say, you loved what you were doing. So the situation that occurred and what you experienced was came from a place of actually like ignorant bliss, you know, ignorance is bliss. And I remember when I first met you, I hadn't started the business yet, but then by the time I did start the business, we'd become friends. And I remember yourself and Lucienne, who's a good friend of ours and a name that people will know locally, you in particular were like, Hannah, be careful, because you could see things in me that you hadn't spotted in yourself. And you know, you did it in a really lovely way, and you were just like, frequently, just be mindful. Yeah. Like, I know you love it and I know you're working really hard, but be careful. It's never that far away. And you would say that to me, Lucienne would say that to me from having, you know, known what you had gone through. And I have to say, like, I really thank you for that, because I think if I hadn't had people, like you said, you didn't have anyone around you at the time who was running a business and who could say, whoa, be careful, like, you're working a bit excessively. And I was very much the same in the early stages of this, and I'm still a bit like it now. I'm not going to lie. I think it's a constant thing I work on. But you're one of the people who, I think you have a really beautiful balance of boundaries and still like freedom and creativity in your business. You're just, if you're looking for somebody who sets a really good example of how to create healthy boundaries in your business, Anna Considine is the lady you need to speak to. I stole your email signature, which I get compliments on all the time, just saying, you know, I'm online from this hour until this hour. This is my next holiday. If you can't get hold of me, this is the case. Like, just very clear communication. And you've since got to the point in your business where, I've written it down here so that I don't get it wrong, but you're trying to build a slow, gentle and profitable business. So where did that concept come from, and why slow, why gentle? Obviously profitable, most people will understand that concept because it's banged over our heads, but the slow and gentle, like you say, not so much. It's very opposite to the hustle culture that, and like you say, I agree with you, the nonsense that we get ploughed with. So how did slow, gentle and profitable happen?
So I think starting with the slow, I think I realised very quickly that I couldn't work in a very high client turnover sort of way. I couldn't have loads of clients every single week, and that wasn't going to work for me. But also, it wasn't just about a kind of health limitations and respecting my energy levels. I also quickly realised I don't actually want to do that, and I want to have longer lasting relationships with my clients, and I don't want to be in the position where someone says to me, oh, your client Sarah, and I have to go, who? Like, I've got no idea. That really didn't sit right with me. I was like, I'm not got into this work to run my business in that kind of way. So I knew I wanted to have a deeper, more immersive kind of process, and to go deeper instead of kind of wider and all that sort of thing. So so that was how the slow kind of started. Gentle was again kind of really honouring and respecting my limitations, and also to attract people that wanted to run businesses a little bit differently, where it wasn't about having to change ourselves into these kind of aggressive and like very capitalistic sort of energy type business owners, but instead to recognise that there aren't enough, women in the space. There's not enough LGBTQ plus people in the space. And I wanted it to be that everybody could find their way of showing up and running their business in a way that respected their personalities. And it took me a long time to realise that I didn't have to become this really noisy, extroverted person to run a business and to work. That actually, if I thought about personal branding, which I know is one of your favourite subjects, but if I thought about what my personal brand was, it really started with the fact that I am an introvert. I'm someone that loves like a cozy evening at home, but I'm not the only one. I wanted to work with people that got that and loved it, and create brands for them that felt cozy, that felt comforting, that had that sort of appeal to them. So that was the gentle side of it. And then the profitable, I think I really want to see, especially more wealthy female business owners, but people from all kinds of backgrounds that haven't had that representation in the business world. I want us all to have businesses that are doing well, so that we get to invest in other businesses that align with our values. We get to have, a lot more clout in investing in programs and things that open the door to other people, and just to kind of help shape the world. Money really does make the world go round. And having really thoughtful people that care about the environment, people that have personal values, have the money to then change the world a little bit and have their say, that felt really important to me. And I didn't want it to be a hobby business. I wanted it to be something that could support if, I want to have kids in the future, which is something I'm thinking about. But I wanted it to be something that it could look after other people. It could look after me and be a safe space for me. So that's how the kind of Holy Trinity
I love it
happened.
Because the thing is, you're slow and gentle are not words that would typically be associated with business. They wouldn't, and there's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't be, because you're doing it. You're a living example of somebody who's doing it. I am getting there. I don't think my business will ever be as good at being slow and gentle as yours, but we're also very different people. But I have also been a victim of the got to run faster, got to do this quicker, got to do more of it, and actually that's not always the case. And I think you're setting a really good example to anybody who's aspiring to run a business but doesn't see themselves in what's presented as successful business and successful people. So kudos for just going with it and sticking with it, because also with what you do, and we're going to get a little bit more into the creative process in a minute, but you work with people who are very often intimidated by what's being done. It's very out of their comfort zone. They're scared to have their photographs taken. They're scared to put their business out there. And actually, your business attracts people who are similar to you and have similar values. And very often they struggle to find the right people to do what needs to be done, because they're not typical. They're not the norm in terms of, they're not the bravest at putting themselves out there, and they are quieter. They are more gentle. So we need creators like you, so that those businesses have people they feel they can trust to do it, because I would be some of those people's nightmare. Because I'd walk in and be like, right, here we go then. I'm not the right person for those people. So, I just think what you've shaped as your business is just brilliant. And watching you over the last sort of 12 months or so with LinkedIn as well, seeing you more where I like to post has been brilliant, because I know you evolved. I've been a real Instagram lover.
Yeah.
So it's really good to see you on LinkedIn. I'm like, she's here and she's smashing it. So that's been really good to see.
Yeah.
But in your words, like, how would you describe what you do to somebody listening? Because it's really easy to say, right, I'm a brand photographer.
Yeah.
You're also a content creator, but what is it? It's not just taking photographs. Look, you're ultimately helping people tell their story, aren't you? And you're going in and helping them put themselves out into the world the way they want to. But to someone who just thinks, oh, she's a photographer, like, what does it mean to you? Because it is more than that.
Yeah, totally. And I think, although it's not something I describe myself as often in public, more so because of SEO and simplicity to call myself a brand photographer. But for a long time, I did call myself a storyteller, because I think we're really recognising, especially nowadays, that we don't just want to see the benefits of a product or the benefits of a service. We want to have some kind of connection and trust with the person offering that service or selling that product. And it's kind of, we've shifted into a place where it's not really enough to just extol the benefits. We need to show who we are alongside it. And I think brands are now really, for me, I want to help clients create safe spaces for their customers, brands that really make them feel like, oh my God, I'm understood here. Like, I'm so like lit up by all of this. And that can look different from one client to another. But that's what I'm trying to do through the content writing world, through the mostly it's photography, to just create these beautiful worlds that your customers are going to be like, oh my God, I want to sign up to every single email. I'm listening to the podcast. The blog is so amazing, like all that kind of thing, just to like create this really gorgeous kind of immersive space that people like, they don't even have to know every detail of what you sell. They just have to know like, oh, this is somebody that really genuinely understands me and that has those values that align and sit alongside my own. So that feels like the commonality in my work. Yeah.
It's very, I would describe your work across the board as you bring like a real like richness to the businesses. Like, you make them look so tactile and so like you could just reach out and be like, I'm there. Like, it's a real, you feel in it when you look at your photography, and also in how you write. And you've written all sorts. You've written for corporates, you've written for tech companies, you've written for marketing agencies and individuals. So your style, you can vary your style, but there's just such a warmth to how you do things. Like, I can spot an Anna Considine photograph a mile off, and that's a really, it's hard to describe, but I can just spot you a mile off.
It makes me laugh because sometimes I like really change my editing style and I'm like, I've got it, I've duped everyone, no one's going to recognize it's me. Put it out there, my friend's like, yeah, I saw that photo the other day and I just knew straight away. And I'm like,
but that's a really, it's fantastic, because to those who like, I'm not a good photographer. I can take a photo that looks okay, but to try and replicate what you do, and like, I watch George, who edits the footage and who edits photos, and I'm like, how have you made it look like that? And then to develop your own style that really does stand out, I just think, it's brilliant. And people would say that about things that I do, but I write words and I think it's easier with words. With photos, it's harder. But you recently moved, so this is going to seem like a bit of a segue, but you weren't born in Northampton, were you?
No, I was born in Croydon. We moved here when I was 4, but I'm technically a Londoner, which, as somebody who's not a big fan of London, I'm shocked to say out
You can
loud.
be an honorary Northamptonian, can't you? I think of you as a Northamptonian, even though I'm not. I'm sorry to people from Northampton if that's not what you're called, but we're going with Northamptonians.
I've always said it.
I'm from Coventry, which I can't believe I've just admitted on air. And we say Coventrians, so I'm just applying the same rules. But you actually recently moved, moved to Edinburgh. When did you move?
It was August 2022.
Okay, so you're
nearly 2 years.
Nearly 2 years.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm referring to sort of where you are is I wanted to ask you, like, at this point in your life, like, where do you feel most creative?
Ooh, I think for me it has to be at home in Edinburgh. And I just get so lit up by the fact that one of the reasons I moved to the city was that it has more independence than any other city in the country. Certainly that was what all of the research I did said. But that's really how it feels. And I live in Leith, which is a really like lovely neighbourhood. Again, lots of kind of standalone, unique businesses on offer. And I just love getting to mooch around our beautiful bookshops and like have a gorgeous coffee where they know like my order and my name and stuff. And it's just a lovely place to kind of fuel like my excitement, because I adore brand photography. I love like landscape photography. I love so many kind of other bits of it, but getting to work with business owners just makes me so excited and like passionate in a really unique way. So I'd say like most of the time it's that. I do also love that my partner converted a camper van. We get to go and see like
so
the
cool.
most amazing scenery ever, and that's really special, and we're very lucky that we get to explore so often. But I do think most of the time it's just living somewhere that really like aligns with my soul is the only way I could describe it. I just really enjoy the whole vibe of Edinburgh. I find it really inspiring.
So I've not been to Edinburgh, but when I see photos that you share, and Paul, co-director, is from Edinburgh, so always tells me how brilliant it is. So when I've looked at it, it is like you, but in a place.
That's 100% how I feel.
You're so, when I look at it, I'm like, yeah, of course you should live there.
Yeah.
And when you said you were moving, like, a bit of me was really sad for me.
Yeah.
But I was really happy for you, and it all made total sense. So I can just, and when you share, you know, you go to get your pastries and you have your coffee and your bookshops, and you look like you're living just the best time, which is really good to see. And all of that feeds into what we do creatively. Like if we're in the right place with the right people, surrounded by the right potential clients, it's just like, I don't know what the word is. Magical.
Yeah,
so with the business, you referred to it earlier, but you have what you referred to as like quite an immersive process, and you go quite deep with the clients in preparation for a shoot.
Yeah.
So I think there'll be quite a few people that'd be interested to hear a little bit more detail about what that process looks like. So talk us through. I've just approached you. I want my vests photographing. I don't know. What's the process you would take a client through typically?
Yeah, so I always start with a consultation call that has the same kind of series of questions. And I like it because, one, I want to prime people for their welcome questionnaire, because to me that's such a foundational part of the journey. But also it's where I get some really juicy kind of insights. Like I want to know what their business journey was up until this point, because when I do their closing off kind of post-session workshop, I'll remind them, this is your story. This is how we tell that story.
Yeah.
This kind of content is going to be really juicy for you. So that's part of it. And just really starting to understand what they love, what their values are, because for a long time I thought my role as a photographer was to replicate what they wanted, what they told me they wanted. I had to learn what that was, and then I had to make that and give that to them. Whereas now I trust myself that I'm the expert. I'm the one that gets to do brand photo shoots multiple times a month, all the way through the year. And that means that usually I've got ideas that they've never thought of and they've never considered. And I see it as me taking my creativity and giving them something that's special and unique to their business. And I'm trying to wow them now. It used to be I want to meet their expectations, but now it's sort of like that kind of under promise, over deliver sort of idea. So I also want to just make sure that we are aligned, that they know my kind of vibe, that I try and go for a really kind of artistic storytelling type feel of photography. And that's really important as well. I want to know that we are the right fit. They haven't just found me on Google and they're working with me because I'm in Edinburgh or something like that. So we do go quite deep. The welcome questionnaire really helps with the next step of the process, which is a photo shoot plan. And I'll use Pinterest. Usually I invite them, but I'm not really that worried about them pinning. It's more getting a bit of kind of creative sign off on what I'm thinking, because I am less afraid to bring different ideas for their shots and props and ideas they might not have considered. So I want to give them a document that takes all of the nerves and the anticipation kind of out of their photo shoot, because so many of them are nervous. I know that I might be their biggest investment they've ever made in their business, or like their biggest one of that entire year, depending what they've been up to. So I want to give them such a clear overview of this is what it's going to involve. I've completely got you. We've worked on this vision together. I think you're going to love this. So it has a few kind of mood boards of the core stories that we're going to tell. It has a shot list. I give them a schedule because I think people are like me, and it's just nice to know that it's all being considered and we're properly prepared. So that's important as well. And I used to just send them the presentation as a PDF. Now we do a live call where I'll say, this shot is because of this, blah, 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 which is really useful, because I had one session with a client where there was a confetti shot and she was like, but I'm not a party organizer. Why would I have confetti? And I got to be like, well, it's really useful for any launch or announcement that you've got and that kind of thing. So I've deliberately added more calls to the process. They get one about a week or 2 weeks before their photo shoot, just as a last minute kind of check-in and to go through any questions that they might have, because I'm so passionate about helping people that are camera shy, that are nervous about being in front of the camera. I find them the most enjoyable people to work with, to be truthful.
You've always said that, I think, since I've known you.
Yeah, totally. And I understand that a lot of my audience is female or have been raised female, and that means that we've been taught to really hyperfixate on our appearances and to have a really warped kind of perspective of how we look in front of the camera. And so all of my process is about like emphasizing like, this is your space, safe space. I've completely got you. Yeah. You're going to look amazing. We've thought of everything. So yeah, that's kind of the common like themes of the process is welcome questionnaire, consultation call to start off with, a photo shoot plan, and just any check-ins that they need to walk them through.
Lots of reassurance, which I think is really important, and it for some people that it will be quite surprising to hear how much you do pre-shoot. So I think a common misconception when it comes to photography and filmmaking and any audio visual content is that you just like turn up and ta-da, you just do it. And I certainly was a little bit like that before I ever had to get involved in any content shoots, because it's just naivety. I just thought, oh, okay, we take a camera and we take some photos, and actually you can do that, but the results will be vastly different. So, and I think it must be so rewarding for you when you are dealing with people who are camera shy and nervous, when they see the results, the reactions you must get. It must just be incredible.
It's incredible. I always get nervous when I send a gallery off, just because I know I've put my heart in it, and I just hope that it lands and that it looks as amazing to them as it does to me. But it's always the best feeling ever when they open it and they're like, oh my God, I've never seen myself like this before. Like, I prefer these to my wedding photos, was one of my clients' feedback.
That's lovely.
It is incredible.
And that's a big statement.
I know.
That person's husband or wife must have just been like, what on earth? The partner must have been like, what do you mean?
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
But it's also with our businesses, you know, your role when working with businesses, and again, anyone who's creating visual content for a business, it's so important and it's so high trust, because you're sitting there saying, look, I can make you look like this. I can make your business look like this. And if the individual who runs the business has no idea how to do that, there comes a point where you have to just go, okay, I trust you.
Yeah.
But it's really not that easy. So, I think the way you've built your process up is brilliant. And like I say, no stone left unturned, and you're going in knowing exactly what needs to be done. And it's not just a case of walking in with a camera and going, cool, how can we make this look pretty? Whatever pretty is, you know.
And I think I used to almost think before I did this process, it's just about the vibe that I create on the day. I don't want to plan because it will limit my creativity. I need to be open and flexible. But I found that the opposite is true, that if you do give yourself structure, then you've thought of all of the small things so that then your head's then on the day as open as it possibly can be, because you're not trying to hold lots of bits of information. It's all figured out for you. So it's huge. Preparation is huge.
That's a really good point, actually, is that the preparation can assist you in being more creative. I've probably never thought of it like that, actually. I'm a preparer as well. Like for these episodes, I do my research. Like you're a friend and I've still researched you.
Yeah.
Just to make sure there was, I didn't know about the makeup thing, but just to see if there's anything I don't know or that I'd forgotten that is important today. So I think, that's a really good point about preparation, actually. That's obviously the process that you take the clients through. What's your personal process for the idea generation, for the creativity? Just what do you do, Anna?
I am a big lover of things like Pinterest. I've got really into, I used to be very kind of Instagram heavy, and there's a very kind of specific kind of photography that tends to do well on Instagram. I think it's kind of broadened a little bit, but it used to be all like flat lays and quite formulaic. So I do love dabbling on Pinterest for sure, but I also love, like, my other half and I went to the National Portrait Gallery in Edinburgh last weekend or a couple of weekends ago, and just like seeing the paintings and how they'd use light and how they'd use colour was so nurturing and so lovely for me creatively. I used to really adore shooting film. It's so monstrously expensive nowadays that I'm very, very specific with, okay, I can invest in film for this kind of purpose. But that was really, really foundational in me learning photography and helping shape my style and my eye kind of thing. But I do just love, like, getting a little bit out of my comfort zone, seeing things that aren't strictly photography and aren't strictly brand photography, I think is hugely important. But also, like, I love getting to play with the camera. My nephew is a star for having his photo taken. He's 5. He's always been so happy to have his picture taken. Even though I think I'm the only person that has like a DSLR, I think everyone else is using their phones. But he's so happy to do it, and I really enjoy, like, just trying to find the beautiful moments in our day-to-day lives, and like remembering to savor like a coffee with my other half in like our favorite cafe on like a Tuesday, and just little things like that. I think because I had my episode, kind of like we were saying earlier, that experience actually really woke me up to how beautiful life is and how grateful I am to be here, and a kind of reconnection with that child self that was like, oh my God, being alive is absolutely rad. Like, we are so lucky.
We are.
So now I think photography has a kind of professional purpose in my life, but it also is about that celebration of life as a whole, and it could be the small things. And I do think it's almost even better to cherish those smallest things and stay in touch with what surrounds us.
There's a lot of beauty in the ordinary, isn't there? Like you said, you go for coffee on a Tuesday with your other half, and it's like, but this is our favourite place. And Cardi was on with us recently, and we've had people message us say, I've got a painting that Cardi did of Northampton in my house, and it just reminds me of this and it reminds me of that. And things that are created, whether it be a photograph, a piece of film, some words, a poem, a painting, a photo, like, they mean different things for different people, and for the people you work for, you're helping them promote their business ultimately, but there's also a personal experience that they've gone through to get those pieces of content, as we would call them, which is such a like distant way to refer to them. But I just think there's, in what you do, there is a lot of beauty in the little things. And like you said, it sounds like your childlike persona has definitely sort of come back in a positive way of like, come on, like, life's beautiful.
It really is.
And even prior to your psychosis, it doesn't sound like you were not experiencing that. Like you said, it came from, you were just really enjoying what you were doing. You just did it a bit too hard.
Yeah, exactly.
You just went a bit too all in, and maybe not enough all in on the sleep. So it's just a balance, isn't it? But But yeah, I love the process, and I think all of that definitely comes through in your photos. That's why they're so recognizable as yours, I think. So yeah, don't ever change that, which I know you won't. So for people who are listening who maybe are a bit like you were when you were sort of back at Bertie's and you'd taken a little bit of a liking to using a camera, but probably hadn't really intended at that time for it to be your career. What advice would you give to sort of aspiring photographers who are just getting started? Like, any tips on how to really hone the craft and what to do when you're at that early stage, really?
Yeah, I think one of the best things that I did was something called a Project 365, which is taking a photo every day for a year. And although the discipline was really difficult and there were days that I skipped it, I tried to do one for this year and completely failed. There was just nothing that helped me make it a habit and engage with and kind of challenge myself to find something special and do something creative with very mundane, very familiar surroundings and things in my life. But I just think the more time you have a camera in your hands, the more opportunities you have to learn. And I've read Atomic Habits. I think you've read it as well.
Love it. Great book.
And I'm pretty sure Atomic Habits is the book that gave me the example of a photography professor that had one class that was like, go and take one photo, that's your assignment, you've got to take the ultimate photo for the whole semester. The other class was, don't worry about the quality, but you're going to take 100 photos or as many photos as possible, and that's your assignment. And that second group did radically better, learnt so much more, and were much stronger photographers by the end of the semester. And that applies whether you're in formal education or not. If you can just really make it a habit and really engage with it and figure out what you like but also what you don't like, and just really surround yourself in it, that kind of daily habit was really important. And I look back at that project and I'm like, bloody hell, that is truly woeful. But I'm so proud that I did it for a whole year. That's just bonkers. And it taught me so much, and I can see the beginnings of the photographer I am now. And I did the same thing. I tried one, I got about maybe like 4 months in or 6 months in, something like that, in the pandemic, and that taught me loads again because we were stuck at home and I was really being pushed to find something special about what felt so boring and so familiar. So it's really important to just get your numbers up almost. Just shoot things, challenge yourself to shoot things that you aren't excited about, different lighting conditions, different people. I wish that I'd branched into portraiture much sooner because I adore it now.
You're brilliant at it.
Feels really strange to think that I used to not like it. It's just, crazy. But just really, really just explore and keep shooting and shooting and shooting, because that's how you learn. There's
definitely a theme occurring in these conversations, which I suppose is bound to happen, and you just, without saying it, referred to the same thing, but everyone so far has had a moment where we've got to this point where we're talking about people who are aspiring to do these kinds of things, and it's be prepared to produce some stuff that you don't like. Like, you've got to work your way through the crap. That's not actually crap, it's just that it's not what you're aspiring to do, but you've got to work through what you would now deem to be rubbish to get to where you are now. Like, if you look back at where you were when you first started shooting for Bertie's, you're like, okay, lighting, steaming, like lots of things that you wouldn't have even thought of. And it's a steep learning curve. But it's the repetition, isn't it? The whole 10,000 hours theory, doing something so much that you will naturally get better.
And I think there's a temptation to quit too early and to think, well, this person that's doing this awesome, wonderful stuff that really inspires me, they were never where I am now. And they were. It's very, very rare to find people that didn't have their own shit phase. It's just an essential part of the journey. Like, don't give up on yourself too soon.
I mean, all you have to do is say on Instagram, scroll right the way down to the bottom of the feed. If people are honest and keep the old stuff there, which I definitely do, you'll see the transition. Absolutely. And in terms of again, something that Cardi said when she was on the episode was that creativity is often work, and it takes work, and it's not just, you know, I think a lot of people who maybe aren't super in touch with their own creativity, because I do believe we all have it, is this impression that creativity is like free flowing and, you know, it's just super fun all the time, but actually it can be really hard work. So what do you do when you hit a bit of a blocker and you're like, oh, it's not flowing, like things aren't happening here? What are your go-to habits that help you get out of that creative block?
Yeah, usually I feel like a creative block happens for me when I'm neglecting something completely outside of the work, and it's usually I'm channeling some sort of source of frustration, or something else is being neglected and not really tended to, and the byproduct is that my creativity has taken a tumble. So my first step now is usually to be like, okay, like, am I getting enough sleep? Like, have I had family time? Have I had time with my partner? Do I need to be out in nature? Do we need a camper weekend or something? I can't really force my way through it. It's usually that there's something else that's being like, Anna, hello, Anna. And I'm ignoring it, and instead I need to go and tend to that thing and like look after like inner child me. Like she's got her needs too. So yeah, it's usually a little sign that I've forgotten something. I need to go take some care somewhere. Yeah,
I'm exactly the same.
Yeah,
I do. I don't force myself through it either. I tend to step away, and like the golden trick for me is like fresh air. Just fresh air, tunes, do something completely different for a minute and then come back to it. But with what you're doing, because it tends to be bigger. If I'm struggling with a bit of copy, I can come back in half an hour. But if you are really neglecting something, then yeah, I'm similar. It's either my sleep, I'm not exercising, or I'm not feeding myself properly. And they're sort of the three, and hydration. I'm so bad at hydration, but I'm not going to talk about that too much because Lucienne will come at me. Okay, Anna Considine, we're going to go into quick fire.
Ooh,
I mean, don't get too excited because they're pretty epic questions. And as I think I said to you earlier, you're not allowed to ask me the questions back. Like, that's a rule now. So those of you who are listening, if you're on the podcast in the future, you heard the rule here. So question number 1 in the quick fire round is, if you could invite, I think I normally say 3 creatives, past or present, to a dinner party at your lovely flat in Leith, who would you have?
Straight off the bat, Caroline Duffy. She's a poet. She was a poet laureate a few years ago, and found her work while I was in secondary school, and it was so good that it stood out even while doing GCSE English.
Wow, so there you go.
I think it would have to be her.
I'll look her up. Caroline Duffy.
Carol Ann Duffy.
Carol Ann Duffy. I'm going to write that down.
Really beautiful poetry. Who else would I think of? I love a lot of writers. So, like, I've just finished, I don't know if you've heard of Akatar. It's
No.
A Court of Thorns and Roses, very like spicy, sexy, like fantasy.
Oh, this is the fantasy thing that
everyone's...
everyone's...
the stuff that's suddenly got huge. I want to talk to her all about it. I wanted her to tell me, like, what were the motivations for this character doing this.
Okay.
So I think I'd have to...
And what's her name, sorry?
She's Sarah J. Maas.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people talk. I listened to the Mel Robbins podcast and she's obsessed with it. Yeah.
I think her, and then I know that she's not with us anymore, but Nora Ephron's films inspire me so much, and she really like embodies that kind of coziness that I want to be at the heart of my brand and my work. And I just think somebody that made films that heartfelt and that beautiful and that soulful, she would be a hoot and a half. A lovely... I bet she'd give you like the best advice ever. So it would have to be her.
I mean, that's a good table. I don't know the first two, but from what you've said, you'd have a lovely time.
I think so.
You'd have a great time, and they'd be being hosted by you, so it'd definitely be a lovely time. Okay, this one's my favourite. Just putting it out there. If your work was edible, what would it taste like?
Carrot cake. I just think it would be carrot cake.
That's got to be the most decisive. I hadn't even finished the question.
I know.
Carrot cake. So what? Yeah, why carrot cake?
I just think carrot cake to me is again that coziness. It's like warm.
It's a good cake.
It's spicy a little bit. It's very like reminds me of kind of autumnal days.
Which is your favourite
good socks
season?
on, 100%.
We need to get that in there.
Yeah.
Anna is obsessed with autumn.
Big into autumn
Yeah.
around here. I think
You'll know when it's autumn if you follow Anna.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It will be very clear. Yeah, I just think it reminds me of my favourite season and like my favourite like Sunday afternoon with a nice cup of tea.
Yeah, very apt, I think. Also like a little bit good for you.
A little bit, not too much.
It's good for you as well. So it's like warm, spicy, good
yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
Like
one of my best
gentle.
friends said we decided on each other's spices, which spices
Oh,
best
cool. That's a good game.
us, and I'm cinnamon. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't know what
good
I'd
bit of
be.
Cinnamon. I'll have a think for you.
Have a think.
We'll workshop
yeah,
later.
we can have that discussion offline. What spice would Hannah Brady be? Yeah, no answers on a postcard, please. Let's not open that up. And then this one's, I think, the most difficult.
Mm-hmm.
If you could choose a song that sort of encapsulates your life so far, your creative life so far, I'm going to say, what comes to mind?
You were saying it, and I knew the answer again. It's Hoppy Poller by Sigur Rós. That's it. Like
Anna, that's such a good song,
isn't it? But that's how I feel about my life as a whole. I feel like I'm getting to really celebrate.
Do you know, I haven't listened to Sigur Rós for so long.
They're amazing.
That's an epic song choice for you.
Yeah.
I have to say, you're the quickest person to answer the quick fires. There was no hesitation.
I just feel like I have had such practice in learning about myself and knowing myself from a young age. So, yeah.
I love that. Oh, people, I'm going to listen to that this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm going to have to as well now I've said
listen to it later, just envisioning you on the train to Edinburgh and then doing your cosy days and you're just doing your thing. Yeah, very good. Very good. I'm a fan of that. Mine would change every week, to be honest. That's why I don't let people ask me the questions back, because I'm just like, well, today it's this. There's just too many songs to choose from, but very decisive, Anna Considine. Thank you very much for your quick fire round. Well done. Very good.
You.
Well done.
Thank
Round of
you so
applause
much.
for that. We've come to the end of the podcast, Anna.
Oh,
It's been so nice. It's been so nice to catch up with you, and I hope there's a lot that's different that's come out of this episode to previous episodes, which is the whole point of this podcast, right? Everyone's different. And you're another person who genuinely makes me believe we are all creative. It's just there's different ways of exercising it. Again, like Cardi would say, I'm quoting Cardi a lot because she just dropped absolute knowledge bombs.
Of course.
Like, of course. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. I'm now going to do an outro because that's also been fed back to us. So, outro. Guys, you've been listening to the Creative Juices podcast. Our guest today has been the lovely, the one and only Anna Considine. If you'd like to follow Anna and find out a little bit more about what she does, you can find her on LinkedIn, Instagram, and her business website is studiogently.com. I will link all of Anna's social media in the show notes. But thank you for joining us. Anna, thank you for coming, and we'll see you all next time.